Welcome to BWI Live. It's the recruiting show, and we're going to get into it today. The sky is falling. It's July, so that seems to be the thing that happens at this time of year, and we're going to discuss, not just the story of what happened, but also, I'd like to workshop some fixes. I'd like to workshop some ideas of just, no bad ideas, just spitball around some things that, how does Penn State get out of this quagmire where they get a good class together and then it gets picked off one by one, it seems. We're going to talk about all of that, but Ryan, it is currently a dead period. Welcome to the show. Ryan Snyder, recruiting reporter for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Not very quiet for a dead period, so, it feels like it's a double whammy of there are stories coming out this week. We'll get into the details here in just a second, but also there's not anything else happening on the other side to balance out the ledger for Penn State fans right now. It's just only the bad news. So from a dead period perspective of that side, what's going on with you and is there stuff behind the scenes going on?
Well, they just got one of their best minutes a week ago. So this guy's not falling that much, in my opinion. But I understand the Aiden Gibson thing this week. I understand Khalil Taylor, but let's also keep in perspective that James Armstrong was a really good get for them and a player that I think that they're going to be able to build around for 2028. And that was that a week ago? Was that Thursday?
Was it
Thursday? I think it was last
Thursday.
Yeah, because we did the show and then he committed kind of slightly after. So
that's right.
But yeah, I mean, look, this time of the year there's always a little bit going on that first or second week of July. Usually there's guys committing, right? We saw that with Khalil Taylor. Obviously he went elsewhere, but it's really more so you want to talk about dead period. We're a week away from it really getting dead. And I believe the coaching staff, most of them come back from vacation July 21, Sean, I think somewhere in that ballpark. So we're talking about 10 more days, 11 more days, something like that. I think after that, you'll see maybe, a few more offers going out and all that, but really it's all about, focus on this preseason camp. And of course, August is a dead period as well. So, in August, of course, we'll have plenty to talk about as far as the team goes and preseason prep and all that good stuff. But for the next couple of weeks, it will be a little slow. And whether that's a good thing or not, we'll find out with time. But, as far as 2027 goes and building on that class, that's going to be more of a September, October thing from what I've gathered.
Sean Fitz, welcome to the show. Any additional thoughts to add to that before we dig into the specifics of, what we've outlined already today?
Not much. You look at where they're at in the calendar, and I know you want to pivot immediately and grab a guy and fill the spot. I don't necessarily know that's the right play right now, especially at those two positions, which are, flowy evaluational positions. When you get a chance to, or I think I would say it this way: they were waiting to see some guys in their senior year to begin with. I think it's best to stay in that mode. I think that maybe you go after Jamar Taylor hard right now. The Rutgers commit that they like a lot. He was up here at team camp with Salesianum a few weeks back. And I think that that's probably the guy that's probably in the actual crosshairs. But beyond that, you still got time. And that's what we kind of lose sight of here with when you lose guys in the summer. It's kind of how that plays out. But at both those positions, they're going to continue to evaluate, and we'll see what's up. And I think I said a week or two ago, the staff's actually been pretty good about evaluating guys after July 1st. Out of necessity, really. You take a look at the situation they've been in. Now, is the situation good? Not necessarily. No, I mean, I don't think that this is anything that you would have written up as an ideal pivot or maybe even a testing of the staff. But at the same time, you play the cards that are out there, and the cards that are out there right now have them sort of scrambling, but I would not say panicking. I haven't seen much panic. And I think there's disappointment. I think there's this is kind of a lesson that's learned. And we said that with Jameer Dean, Deshaun Hall. But at the same time, I don't think there's been too much panic in that nature.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Aiden Gibson was the most recent of these and the one that, Ryan, I'm going to come to you on this one. My perception of the situation, based on what you guys have reported and just our conversations, what I've seen of the situation, seemed like a very strong commit, a guy that you weren't really looking at as far as maybe a Samaje Robinson, as you outlined earlier in the class, and suddenly on Tuesday he flips to Rutgers, his runner-up school initially in his first decision to commit, chose Penn State over Rutgers, and now has flipped there. So can you give us the the blow by blow, give us the facts from the fiction of what's been talked about around this since it happened a couple days ago.
Well, Sean, I think the first thing, and you kind of pointed this out to me the other day, reminded me of this, I would say, is that Rutgers was the perceived favorite for Gibson, right? Am I right with that, Sean? Put me back on multi-screen. Dang it.
All right.
There we go.
Sure.
Am I right with that, Sean? I mean, we both kind of thought
take a
that.
look at when the decision came out, because he went and visited a bunch of schools, and when that decision came out, the first thing that leaked out was Rutgers. Like, I think that was it, and I think Penn State went above their bid, or whatever you want to call it, with the monetary aspect, and won that one out. I think it's kind of it's tough. It's tough to how to
damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, you take a look at, they had 3 top running backs on the board: Trey Segarra and Gary Walker from down south, and they ended up landing one of them. And yeah, I don't want to. I saw the quotes about his heart always being in Rutgers. I think there's absolutely more to play at this. I do think that he genuinely really liked Rutgers the first time around. Really liked the job that they do up there. Greg Schiano is a really good recruiter, and on top of that, if you look at Rutgers, they do have good running backs. So, like, it makes sense.
It's central to the core of their offense and their identity as a
team. The thing that gets me here is the reclassification. Like, I think that's kind of goes against what we had heard even a couple of months ago in terms of what he was looking to do. And you take away, we'll talk more about this on BlueWhiteOstar.com, but you take a look at the way that Penn State laid out in front of him what the plan was. Their plan was to not use him much in 2027, let alone 2026. Sorry, have him be in the mix in 2027. Didn't fit in 2026 at all, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so I just want to get, that's important to start. And even right when he committed, I asked him, South Carolina, right? South Carolina was a school that's talked about much. Rutgers, obviously, we knew. And I mean, he made it very clear that his relationship with Demir Shaw, the running back coach of Rutgers, was the strongest he built with anybody. All right. So I just want to get those 2 things off the bat to start there. Now, the story, though, really starts, I guess, in early June. I laid it out the other day. We'll just kind of share it with what I understand publicly now. Some kind of, I call it altercation. I don't know if it was with his coach, whether it was another team. Maybe he felt like his coaches didn't back him up. I don't know the details with that one. And honestly, it doesn't matter all that much, in my opinion. The details we do know are that something happened. And basically, Aiden was really upset with his staff over the way things were handled. And so he was supposed to be suspended, I believe, for a game or 2. I don't know the exact details, though, so I left that out of the report. I believe it wasn't going to be too much. And whenever this happened, which was I believe right before his OV or right after his OV with Penn State, it really kind of changed his mindset on staying at Woodruff. And that was the big part. I don't believe in South Carolina you can transfer like that and just move wherever and play. I don't 100% know all the South Carolina rules, but I did ask about that and was told it wasn't going to be easy for him to just go to another high school and do whatever he wanted to, play right away. So he puts out this message on TikTok. I put it up in the story the other day. I'm not going to go through it all, but basically it was just him kind of explaining, he lost his love for not the sport, the sport too, but just kind of was really frustrated with a lot of things going on at the time. And that always grabbed my attention, but I didn't put a ton of stock into it because I've seen a lot of teenagers write a lot of things on social media over the years. I've seen a lot of college players write a lot of things on social media as well. So with that understanding, though, I think really what happened there is when that popped out, I think that, or when that, was put out there publicly, I believe he deleted it because I can't find it anymore, but that triggered Rutgers into looking into his situation more. I'm sure Rutgers was already, in touch with him to some kind of degree, but Rutgers has a history now of getting guys to reclass pretty quickly. We saw it with Wadiq Collier. Was it like a week or 2, Sean, before the season last year? I know it was really late. They bumped to 7 guys, I believe, total since 2021. Appreciate our colleagues for kind of Richie O'Leary for giving me those kind of stats. So they have a history here. I don't know if it's with their admissions or whatever, but they were able to get it done. And of course, Aiden was planning to enroll early, so his classes were already in a good spot. I don't know, if he had another credit or 2 he had to get. Sean, we did talk about how Penn State did discuss that with him previously, and from what I understood back in the spring, that wasn't something he was all that interested in. Well, this Woodruff situation changed that, and Rutgers seized the opportunity. Not only were they able to get him admitted to the point where he could enroll ASAP, or it'll be August 2nd is I believe the day he gets there. But they also upped the ante as far as signing bonus goes. I don't know exactly what Penn State was planning to give him, and I don't know exactly what Rutgers is planning to give him. What I know is that from talking to Penn State sources, it was basically a situation where, they'd be paying what they felt was money that you could give a player in the transfer portal. So given that, knowing that, and knowing what Sean said earlier, which is that, 2026, that's not really needed at all. Not in their plans at all, at least for depth chart wise. They felt it didn't make a lot of sense to pay him money that I wouldn't be shocked would be more than what some of their guys they are going to need this year are making. I don't know the exact amount, but I think it's high six figures. And decided to kind of move on with that and not let Rutgers win the battle, but not fight it as hard as I think they would have if, money was more comparable. So I know Penn State they brought up the opportunity that, they would look into having him reclass if it meant they could definitely keep a hold of him. But I think the combination of him being 50-50, Rutgers adding money on top of that, and all those things, not needing him in 2026, made it easier for them to move on. And so that's kind of how it all played out. I think it stinks for the staff in a lot of ways because they loved Aiden Gibson. They still like Aiden Gibson a lot. They think Aiden Gibson is going to be a really good player.
Yeah.
I don't think Aiden Gibson's a bad kid or anything. I want to make sure that clear as well. I don't know what happened at the 7-on-7 tournament.
Seems to be a bigger deal than we thought initially.
Yeah, clearly. I mean,
so essentially, he was looking for a way out of his current situation. Rutgers offered it to him, plus incentive to do that, and that was a decision that
plus he really likes Rutgers. I mean, let's not.
And he likes Rutgers.
Yeah, let's not sweep that under the rug. Really likes that. Like Ryan said, that was the initial read on that that recruitment. So, somebody asked a question here in the chat, and it's too far up, which I'm glad because a lot of people are commenting here in the chat about reclassification, and I hate it. Like I think in this game, you're just going to have outliers that kind of make you think it's okay, like a Malachi Toney last year. Ryan Williams did it 2 years ago. Braylon Allen at Wisconsin a couple of years ago. Sonny Styles. Yes, there have been some success stories, but the overwhelming majority. Charles Power did a story on this a year ago. The overwhelming majority were not successful, and the book is still out really on Max Granville here. But
also he lost a year to injury, so that's kind of resetting his clock anyway. Like having to take a medical injury year, kind of puts him back on track to where he was before.
So that there's that. But if you look down the list of, and T Frank, I'm going to send you the link here if you want to put that in the chat. But Quinn Ewers was a 7th round pick. But beyond that, Tony Grimes is a name that Penn State fans know. Mm-hmm. But he went to 5 schools, I think. And he went to North Carolina early. Was a 5-star prospect at one point. I think he ended up a 4-star. But he did not really perform at that level. Malcolm Johnson from DC area went to Auburn, ended up at Bowling Green. Speaking of Rutgers, Gavin Wimsatt, the quarterback, that savior quarterback, went to Rutgers, then Kentucky, then Jacksonville State. Cam Edge went to Maryland, Eastern Michigan. These are just basically picking out guys that you would know. Austin Simmons at Ole Miss is now at Missouri. There's a lot that goes on here that guys aren't ready for, and it's not necessarily a physical thing, but it's tough to make that transition and have expectations of playing, contributing, because a lot of these guys end up in the portal in a year or two, and it's not ideal.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation when you're trying to accelerate your timeline while also not having that early enrollee status to actually accelerate your timeline of know the offense, be in the weightlifting program, get used to campus, get used to your new schedule. You're thrown in cold. And so, is that a valuable use of your time when if you wait 6 months, is it even 6 months? Enrolling in January versus August, you have a better run up to the season. This is the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, and I keep trying to say on this show is football is hard. It's not just physically hard. It is a mentally taxing sport for you to know what you're supposed to be doing in any given situation and in every given situation. And maybe you're not going to be that as an early enrollee freshman, but to get on the field, you have to know enough that it's not a telegraph of what you're going to be doing when you go on the field. So,
that was just, I totally forgot Daniel Jennings' name. Like, and he's supposed to be a freshman at Penn State this year. Like that's where we're at.
He's already gone.
And he came in and yeah, obviously, outside circumstances and things like that, but he came in as a defensive end. They wanted him to be a defensive tackle and just was not, like, from a maturity standpoint, it just wasn't happening. So,
he went to Tech, right?
It made a lot of sense for him to go to Virginia Tech because of where he's from. But like, that was it was a zero-sum game. I guess you take them because you have to at some point, because if they want to reclassify that bad, they're going to find a school.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side of that for T. Frank is that it sounds great to get to the money a year earlier, but if you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to flame out because of the emotional maturity, because of the physical being behind the guys that have actually been in the weight program, it's really going to probably stunt your eventual growth. And by the way, those those compensations went up quite a bit. Year. So you think about Whitey Collier reclassifying to 2025, and because he would have missed out in 2026, probably would have made more in 2026 than he made in 25 and 26.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
There's also a knock-on effect if you want to go to the NFL. Like, I forget who it was, like 15, 17 years ago, there was a defensive tackle, I forget his name, that was like 19 years old because he was young when he enrolled in college, and he only stayed in college 3 years, and then he tried to go to the NFL, and like it just didn't work. Like there's a rhythm to this for a reason. The physical and mental maturity is absolutely necessary for football, and like if you think you're getting to this money early and then you can get to the NFL money early, that's probably not the case. Ryan, you're going to jump in with something.
Just trying to remember, Sean. The previous staff didn't want Daniel Jennings to enroll early, right? Like they were for Max Granville. I don't think they wanted Daniel Jennings to.
Yeah, and I think that, sometimes, like I said, you're kind of, I don't want to say strong-armed into it, but like if Max Granville wanted to reclassify and Penn State didn't want him to reclassify, maybe he goes to Oklahoma or Texas A&M or whoever, one of the other schools he's going to. It's like, it's about the options that you have and the leverage that you have that comes with it. So
they felt he was ready to
committed early. Yeah.
And he also had the right perspective about it, where he came in not expecting to play and was wanting to do the development during the season. Like I think, having spoken to him about that the day before he enrolled, he was talking about all the things that you would be doing in January instead of talking about, I want to get on the field or any of those things. He didn't really have aims for that. It was more about, I want to get here and use the resources and develop my senior season among serious people at the next level. Nothing against his high school coaching staff, but like, when you have the right mentality, it can be helpful. But that's a rare situation and circumstance.
To be fair, that's what Daniel Jennings, that was his mentality too. I just don't think he was nearly as ready as Max
they can
Granville
do
was.
it. It's just really hard.
True.
Really, really hard to do. And when you're coming from Princeton, West Virginia, that's an even tougher jump to make. Now, the 5 for 5 is interesting because it's either when you enroll or when you turn 19 is when your clock starts. So, a guy like Peter Bork, who's I think going to be 19 or 20 whenever he enrolls, like that changes some things from that aspect, but that's a very, very micro sense of the sample that we've got here. Like there's not too many guys around like that. And sometimes when you see these guys reclassify, they're already that old. It's just a matter of they took a red shirt when they were in elementary school or what have you. So
how is that going to work for Bork? Actually, that's a good point. I never thought about that. Is he only going to get 4?
I'm not sure when his birthday is, so we'll see.
That'll be interesting.
Well, I got one last question about Aiden
Another
Gibson.
Court case comment. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, move on.
Well, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Right.
With Aiden Gibson and this particular situation, I want to focus on Rutgers for a second. This was my kind of initial reaction yesterday when we talked about it to start yesterday's show, and I just want to run this by you in terms of the impact of these decisions. Aiden Gibson is the most valuable player in Rutgers' class. If you look at like reclass of 26 to 27, doesn't matter. He would be the highest rated recruit in either of those classes. If you look at him in Penn State's class, like he is one of a certain group of players that has a value. But in the long run, Rutgers is making a bet that Aiden Gibson, from a value standpoint, is worth all of this stuff and can be at least in some way, program-changing element in their recruiting. is a win that we've talked about in the offseason. It's not just an offseason win. It is a kind of a structural win for them for what they want to do. For Penn State, is Aiden Gibson that? And I guess the decision to move on from him would say no, to not fight for him in that way monetarily says no. But to me, this just seems to be the trap that they're in. Guys that are valuable to a Rutgers or a Maryland or some other second-tier Big Ten school end up bleeding from the bottom of their roster, and then they're locked out from those guys at the top end who are getting the excessive amounts of money. So they seem to be in this very narrow bandwidth of recruits that they can recruit and maintain throughout the process. And I just, from a Rutgers standpoint, I don't think Aiden Gibson changes the trajectory of the program, but what it does is it does hurt Penn State. And I just wanted to get your reaction to that, Fitz.
Yeah, no, I
just
agree.
that thought.
I mean, we've kind of talked about this before, being in that band of 15 or 10 to 25 or something like that, puts you in an inenviable middle spot where your top guys are going to be valued by the top guys, the top spenders, and your other guys are going to be valued by the guys below you as top guys. So like you kind of find yourself in that window. Now you have to navigate it. It is what it is. You're not suddenly, finding an influx of cash, or important here, changing the way that you're spending. Like that's kind of the lifeblood of not just the program, but the staff. Matt Campbell feels that way. Like there's certain guys worth paying for, and there's certain guys that are worth letting go for a certain number. Now they wanted, and I don't know that you tried to say it like this, Steve Frank, but they wanted to keep Aiden Gibson. They think that he's a really good running back. And
Yes.
I just don't want it to be twisted, because anytime you say something that's like, you give a reason, then it becomes an excuse. That's what happens on the internet.
Yeah.
So like they wanted Aiden Gibson. They wanted Aiden Gibson to stay. I don't think the circumstances dictated that happening, but at the same time, like that's a guy that they thought could be a really good player in this offense. And again, Rutgers has had some success. By the way, Antoine Raymond was a reclassified kid. He's from Quebec. He went to Clearwater International Academy. So like there's some play at there. So I'm guessing he's probably one of those guys that was a year older and reclassified. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense if he wants to get up there and go. From a Penn State perspective, yeah, paying for those guys is tough. We talked last year. I think the first guy that we kind of said this was Elias Cook from Harrisburg, was a guy that was 10th on the receiver board at Penn State. But if he can be 10th on the receiver board at Penn State, and Rutgers can get him as one of their top 3 guys, that makes a lot of sense. Like there's stuff like that. Roseby Lubintis was a guy that Syracuse paid for, and then eventually was going to come back around. But at the same time, it's that kind of thing, is where you can just nip at the heels enough and grab a couple of guys. This time, this is very different than DJ McClary, very different than Jalen Matthews, in the sense that Penn State wanted to keep Aiden Gibson, but at the same time, it's the same structural build. And hey, that's how you end up eventually retaining a guy like KJ Duff, who on the open market could have gotten $1.5 million last year. Like there's things that come into play with that. So they're going to continue to build up from the recruiting side of things, have bigger classes than you're seeing at Indiana and Alabama and things like that, because I think they feel like they have to.
So another thing too, real quick, T Frank, one last thing I want to add is it's important to keep in mind too.
Right, let's just go back and forth and just stomp on T Frank every time he starts.
Sorry, T Frank, my bad, buddy.
It's all good. No, like the rundown is empty because I wanted you guys to do everything is you guys today.
That's what there's plenty to discuss. Yeah. Rutgers had 18 incoming transfers last year. 14 were G5 or lower FCS. I mean, what's that tell you, right? I mean, I think they struggle with top transfer, right? I mean, let's call. I mean, they've had a couple nice ones, but for the most part, and for the record, Penn State has too. I'm not pretending that Penn State's over here getting all these top guys, because they haven't really done that in recent years. But to me, it says they know that that's a tough road for them to navigate. Where do you spend money? Well, last year they spent on Desir Carter. We know that, Sean, and now here they're spending on Aiden Gibson a little bit more. So I think that's kind of more of they've found more success with that, and I could see them continuing to do that.
Yeah, my point was Aiden Gibson is a really good football player they want to keep. Rutgers is paying Aiden Gibson, because the rest of you look at their recruiting class, they're probably not paying top dollar and going and poaching a bunch of players to recruit that class. Penn State has to pay for Keyshawn Telfair, Stanley Montgomery, Cooper Terwilliger, Case Alexander, Elijah Gurton. They've had more success, and with more success comes with more monetary responsibility. So if you're going to be pushed on every front, you can't just up the ante at every single position for every single player you recruit. And eventually you have to make some of these tough choices. And that's what I mean by it really only hurts Penn State because Rutgers is not able to do that themselves. Like they're trying a different plan, right? Of trying to get key players at certain positions to, kind of allure some stars and kickstart the engine. They're just in different places in the recruiting paradigm that presents itself, which is a total mess right now in college football. Let's move on to our favorite topic here, the one that makes me a liar. I said we were not going to have any more Khalil Taylor updates, but of course, like the fallout of him choosing Nebraska is something that we have to talk about, and it comes as the initial thing this week that caused the stir that is now Penn State can't recruit, and the sky is falling for certain people that are unhappy with the way things are in the class of 2027, which, by the way, is currently ranked 22nd and 7th in the Big Ten. So we talked about this a lot of going in. This is what you were not strong on Penn State landing Khalil Taylor. Here he is going to Nebraska. And so Fitz, what is there interesting on this side to discuss about Khalil Taylor and the fallout from his decision?
Sean's tapped from this.
What's that?
Sean's tapped out from this topic. You were like, "What's interesting?" I'm like, Sean's like done with it. But
what's
on.
interesting?
No, me too. Like me too. That was like again, like I don't know. It is something we have to talk about because it's a loss, but it's also like we talked about it for 3 months, 4 months. So I guess like we
talked about Tuesday too. So there's that.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, I think that there's not much to add to what I said earlier this week, and that it's a long process. And I think that this is one of those ones where you eventually could see it coming back around if you gauge how he's done the process, if you gauge how the people around him have handled the process, and how he's essentially been committed to Penn State twice. And like, there's a reason for that. But at the same time, there's a lot of outside influence that has come aboard in the last month or so. Ryan reported he switched agents. There's a lot to do with that. Then is it worth it for a high school receiver? Like I'll just lay it at that. Like I understand you want the best guys possible. I wrote something after his commitment. You want the best guys possible, but like you're not signing production and guaranteed outcomes. You're signing talent. And yes, you want to sign the top talent to get there. Sometimes the top talent doesn't get there. So we'll see what happens with Khalil Taylor over the next couple of years. I think he's a really, really talented kid. I think there's some things that still need to come together for him as well. So I'm curious how this goes out in the next couple of months. And to me, if I'm Penn State, you just shut off notifications for a while and come back around. Is Nebraska going to be good this year? That's a long way from home. We've seen this recruitment play out several times over. I didn't change my pick from Penn State. Not that I think that he's eventually going to land at Penn State, but I don't think this one's over. So Ryan hit me up the other morning, like, "Hey, you're still on Penn State." I'm like, what's the point in changing it here? So we'll see what happens over the next couple of months. Again, I'm not saying that Penn State is going to be the eventual landing spot for him, but I would be very shocked if that one was in the books.
Ryan, what do you got?
Matt Rule got a nice extension, so I don't know. I mean, it's really going to take a disaster every year for that. Like I still look at Gabe Jenkins as the more realistic one at this point. Is the guy that I think that they could get later on. There's you're wearing your Boulder shirt right now, I believe, Sean. I don't know. I don't see
there's more Pitt rumors out there now than Penn State rumors with Jenkins.
I don't know anything anymore. Apparently, I don't know, but we'll see. The worth it thing is kind of what I keep coming back to at this point. You tried. There's just been a lot of gut punches in that one.
I want to ask this and be respectful of Khalil as a player and the relationships involved here. Matt Campbell talks a lot about culture and fit. Is Khalil Taylor a fit for Penn State? Culturally, given like how this is all played out and some of the subtext that goes into what it means to make decisions about culture above talent. And Ryan, Fitz, whoever wants to answer that question about this particular fit with Penn State.
I think he's a great kid. I think that money's just very important, maybe more important than almost everybody else in this class. And so you have to weigh those pros and cons. How do they look at that compared to how I look at that is kind of hard to say. Sean, correct me if I'm wrong. I just feel like I like Khalil a lot. I've always liked Khalil. I've met him multiple times. think he's a good person, cares about the right things. I also just think they wanted to make sure that they maximized every cent they could get out of this situation, and he hasn't played it down yet. So guess what? It's probably going to happen again, and it's probably going to happen again, and it's probably going to happen again. And so I think that's kind of where I come back to of, them weighing the pros and cons of that.
You're going to need to constantly recruit Khalil Taylor to stay on your roster is kind of what you're saying of, even if he commits to you, even if he plays, especially if he plays well, then it's going to be a constant negotiation.
You always kind of are. You're kind of doing that with everybody nowadays. But Sean, I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Sean, but that's just kind of how I feel.
Not really. I do think Penn State will compromise with some guys that maybe aren't, cookie cutter fits or whatever they're going to do. But at the same time, you got to pick the right guys, the most talented guys. Somebody mentioned Micah in the chat. I think Khalil's really good. He ain't close to Micah.
Not Micah Parsons. No.
So
I wrote multiple times. I think he was the second most talented receiver they were recruiting this. They needed to get one of Jameer Dean or Khalil Taylor, and here they are with neither of them. And that is a great pivot to the next situation, next topic, which is the recovery. Like, what are the options left right now at receiver, and especially receiver? Because Ryan, you wrote about this. You gave some names, but also running back. Like, I'll start with running back. I think we all like Chu Odo as far as like a talent perspective. Would you think that Penn State is comfortable with one running back in this class? Like, not naming names or anything, but is there a reality where they go in with just 3-star Chu Odo? And I'm saying that in the context of how people are going to respond to that, losing the 4-star, keeping the 3-star, even if that context does not merit their kind of talent levels. Do you think like they could go into signing day with just one running back here, Ryan?
And to signing day, December, yeah, I do think it's possible. I think they won another one, but I think they won another one.
they wanted 3, man.
I know, yeah. But you don't think the 5-for-5 thing changes that at all?
A little bit, but probably not much. Like,
I don't think so either.
I think you look at running backs and how they work. If you can get early impact guys. Now, the third guy was probably going to be a speed guy, like I don't want to say a gadget guy, but like a speed guy. Yeah. One of those guys.
Role.
Is he a slot guy or is he a running back type thing? So like that's something you throw in there. Kick returner, guy that can add value to your roster all over the place. Because signing a third running back, but whether it's a senior riser, somebody that you've been monitoring for a long time, but signing a third running back, that's a tough.
I just have no idea who that would be right now, and that's kind of where my struggle is. It's going to have to be.
They got to play their senior seasons. They got data and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, like, that's something you look at probably from an out of region guy. So sort of like a Cam Wallace type guy. A guy that you find that you can be late. And Cam had a wonderful senior season, and find a guy like that in that mold. And I know Cam's not really in the picture right now in terms of the top 3 guys. But you're looking for a guy like that that's got some athletic capabilities that make sense, and is a production guy, because that's what they're looking for.
I think DeJohn Talley-Rhodes wanted to be at Penn State, and that's like a guy that I think would make sense for them to circle back on. But he's also committed to Indiana now, so
yeah, seems fine.
Happy. So that's where my struggle is. And you're right. Yeah, obviously they're going to look for senior risers. They're going to have. I'm sure there's going to be some flip candidates. We'll see. It just, to me, wide receiver feels like a much easier one to. Maybe it's because the pool's so much bigger, but I struggle a little bit with running back and who exactly in what direction they're going to go.
All right, let's talk about receiver then, because you mentioned you feel like you have a better handle.
Like, it's not going to be Justice Hardy, I don't think.
Okay.
Sorry, cut you off. Like at Wilson, like there's some guys that make sense on paper, but I don't think that they're that high.
There's a lot of guys on the radar early in this region that are not on the radar anymore, and I don't think it's going to be one of those guys. So
I agree. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So just talk about maybe I just started a question with talk about. What is this? My first day on the job? Who are some guys that you are targeting, Ryan, that you think are reasonable players to fill out this receiver class that has one? I'm assuming they want to get more than one, and they will keep a spot with some of those senior risers. But who are the names that you're looking at right now as far as receivers who fit what Penn State wants from all the different metrics and styles they want to play?
Yeah, I think they want what they were going for. They want a Deshaun Hall kind of type, and they want a Jameer Dean, Khalil Taylor type, right? Somebody who brings a little bit more speed. I've talked to multiple people now that they want to increase the speed on this roster, and especially at the wide receiver room. That's been brought up multiple times. At the same time, they like a big body guy that sure hands and all that, like Hall would have offered. So see where things go. Obviously, like as Sean said, but there's a lot that's going to play out during the season. We discussed Jamar Taylor already out of Louisiana, down in Wilmington, Delaware. 6'4", 190. He's got great size, and he has some good track measurements as well. Had a 22 something in the 200 meter this year, which is pretty good, and won the high jump down there in Delaware as well. So he's a pretty good athlete. I also feel like he's a guy that Rutgers is going to be aggressive with. That Rutgers very much wants to keep Jamar Taylor. I think he's one of their best commits in that class, honestly. And he had a very good showing at the opening last week. And I feel like that's, I don't know if that's going to trigger other schools to poke around, but I also feel like he's a guy that's could eventually, move up in the rankings and all those kind of things as well. So just keep that in mind.
The lesson there is, you look back to when he was still uncommitted, and obviously he likes Rutgers a lot, and they're willing to keep him, and they're going to pay quite a bit. I think probably quite a bit more than the original deal was worth, but you got to look at, you're in Pennsylvania. Deshaun Hall is the guy that you've circled as your X target, your top X target. He's in Alabama. Yes, you can get him there, but like you get him there in June, we see what happens, and they did. But at the same time, you got to make that determination of, is Jamar Taylor right in our backyard, like in this little bubble, this 6-hour radius that Penn State has recruited so well at for so long, is, even if you don't think he's Deshaun Hall, is he comparable enough where you need to make that move in the spring? And I think that's the lesson learned here with Hall, with Dean. It sucks because there was no market for Jameer Dean when they got him. And then all of a sudden, I think he was surprised that Georgia came along, that's the kind of recruitment that it was. And at the end, it made a lot of sense for him to stay down south. But those are the lessons you got to learn. And in that process, figure out how to cultivate the relationships fast enough where you can make it so it's like, okay, well, Penn State is trustworthy. Penn State is the place to go, that you can, reclaim what you thought Penn State might have been a couple of years ago, or just a year ago, for Christ's sake.
It's all good. That's still on the PG-13 list.
I'd say way worse than that, man. Jeez.
I know, but Mom,
By the way, like the video, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel if you want the details behind what's going on with Penn State football recruiting, as our guys here are just the absolute best at giving you the facts and information, the story, and not just throwing out hot speculation, which is what the internet is, or like partial truths and conjecture in just like ways that don't actually reflect what's going on. These guys have a great pulse on that. So like, I want to reward them with all their hard work, and the only way I have to do that is to say that I think they're great. But also, if you help us out and like the video and subscribe here to the YouTube channel, helps us keep doing the show. So the late risers and that kind of aspect of this, when it comes to filling out this particular class, how are you guys trying to factor in the transfer portal to this conversation as well? I want to bring this up with some facts, and then I'll just throw it to you guys as far as like observational things that you can see from their time at Iowa State. Because Beard and Broke 92 says, honestly, I'm worried about quality depth in 2 to 3 years. I think that's a fair conversation point if you were only with the recruiting aspect of high school. I'm just going to throw out 3 names that I know have contributed at and been good at Iowa State. Chase Soule was a transfer in 2025. Jalen Travis was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts in the 4th round. They found him in the transfer portal. And, of course, Jaden Higgins, who was 6'4" from Eastern Kentucky, went in the NFL draft, now plays for the Houston Texans. They have an ability to find guys in the transfer portal without a doubt. So I guess from a select talent perspective, do you think at Penn State that is sustainable with an increased eyeball on everything they're doing, and secondarily at a higher volume if these problems in recruiting at the high school level continue? Like, I know they want to be development guys with high school players, but Fitz, like, if they have to continually go to the transfer portal to fill some holes, whether it's depth or immediately with starters, do you think that is a sustainable thing they can do this year and in the future at Penn State?
Yeah, I think some of it is, but at the same time, it's like, you know, damn if you do, damn if you don't, because you've got to build your base roster from the recruits that you bring in, from the culture that you instill in them, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, like if those guys don't make it for whatever reason, injuries or just plain flame out, whatever, then you've got to plug those gaps. And are you plugging gaps with the absolute top transfers, or do you think you can be better than everyone in the margins? And right now, they seem to be going for those margins, and I don't think that's a sure thing at all. So we will see what happens over the next couple of cycles. Penn State does have money, like against what you've kind of told yourself and heard over the last couple of months. Penn State does have money. It's just everything is blowing up in this situation where you get $30 million now or whatever their roster number is going to be, and it's like an old $20 million roster. So that is the navigational
Inflation
waters
is a bitch. There's no way around that. Inflation sucks, man.
And credit to the kids for getting the money, credit to the agents for getting the kids the money, but this is, it's tough to sustain something like this unless you're a couple of programs that don't seem to have a bottom on that money pit. So, and Penn State's not one of those programs.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, depends on what your floor is too, in my opinion, as a fan, right? Like where is the bottom line of what you find acceptable? Because I think we're seeing that right now with high school recruiting in some sort of manner as well. So yeah, I think they'll find their hits. But I don't think the transfer portal is ever going to be a place where Penn State fills all of its cracks. I just think that it's just, unless if something changes as far as collective bargaining wise or whatever it may be, as far as there actually is a true cap, just because it's proven now, especially over the last 2 years. The last 2 years and before that, I think are a little bit different, but it's a different ball game right now. And when you have the Texas Techs, Miamis, the Oregons, and not to mention the Texas and all those kind of big time schools out there, I find it hard to see that being the way to success for Penn State. Maybe that will change, but like you listed 3 examples there, T. Frank, but what was that? 3 of 40 guys they've taken. You know what I'm saying? And like, so
and that was
what
just
are you,
like,
what is your floor? What is your floor of success in that? I think I think how I look at their floor and how fans look at their floor are different, honestly. And so it comes back to perceptions and reality and what you're willing to accept with that. They'll find success, yes, but if you think that's going to just fix things, I don't see that happening.
Yeah,
it's even more expensive. The portal's even more expensive.
Yeah, but again, they were finding guys that fell through the cracks. Jaden Higgins and Chase Soule,
Right.
2 guys that have NFL level talent, but did not command the market price to go somewhere else. Like they're still going to be market shopping, trying to find the efficiencies in the transfer portal market in that situation. And that was very much my question of, okay, so they do have specific examples of success. Could they supplement and do more of that here? And like I think you accurately lay it out. If you're going to be going there, you're going to be paying more money, and you're going to be you need that is a bad cycle to get into as well. It sounds like, of like trying to rely on the transfer portal to find guys that slip through the cracks from a scholarship perspective as well. Because what I'm talking about here is like, you miss a guy like Aiden Gibson, but then there's somehow a guy shakes free after his freshman season at another school who has Big Ten talent. Can you consistently find the Omarion Davises of the world, or the Alexander McPhersons, who come in here and have legitimate talent, but obviously there's a longer runway before they should get on the field?
Yeah, they can.
I think with the way that things work now, the portal expansion is, you look at the way that Penn State went about when they got Chop and Hunter Norzad and things like that. That was we have a full roster. We have to we have to reinforce with these guys that can be starters and things like that. Now you're looking all over the place. Now you're looking at, as you mentioned, Omarion Davis. You're looking at redshirt freshmen and sophomores and things like that. Like Jack Griffin is a top 5 or 10 important name in Lash right now, because you have to be ready for that portal, and you have to be ready for what comes with it, because I don't think we're going back to the days of 3-4 man portal classes. We're going firmly in the other direction. And it's not going to be last year. Like last year's an outlier as well. But you kind of find somewhere in the middle where you're looking at bringing up guys, especially, I don't want to say FCS guys, but like lower power 4 guys that want to, take a bite of this apple. And some of those guys are going to like be big time costs, and some of those guys not really. And you're looking, it's all over the place. I saw this discussion on the board the other day, talking about portal studs and things like that. And someone's like, well, you mean like a portal stud like Brock Riker, being sarcastic about a Texas State redshirt freshman? Yeah, that's what you got to find. And this is probably your starting center coming up this year, maybe a multi-year starter. Exactly. That's a portal stud. It's just a matter of, it's not necessarily going to be the guy that you feel the best about being a 1-year rental, because it does not always work like that. We've seen, you look at Penn State's receiver room last year, it's an expensive receiver room for nothing.
Yep. Johnny Dixon, another. I'm going to throw out more examples of what I'm talking about, and what you're outlining here, Fitz, is of Davian Collins, guys who you go, okay, they got that guy. I don't understand how he fits in the picture, but it's about the talent. It's about just getting players with talent and time left on their card for the future. I want to jump into the mailbag here before we get to our final topic of the day. In the chat, Sun Win says, losing the initial wide receivers coach in that fashion is my only big critique of Campbell and his staff. We're feeling the repercussions months later still. I don't necessarily buy this, Sun. Normally he's spot on with a lot of his comments, but like the Green Bay Packers receivers coach job is a dream job, and you would be doing a disservice to Noah Pauley to like prevent him in any way from going and having that
what's the
job.
Critique there that they couldn't keep him from going to the NFL?
I guess that would be, or knowing that he was going to have that opportunity, so not going with him. I'm not quite sure what the alternative would be.
I'm pretty confident in saying that basically every position coach at Penn State, if they were offered that same position coach for the Green Bay Packers, they would. I mean, 90% of them. Maybe there's 1 or 2 that wouldn't, but I think Terry Smith would become the cornerback coach for the Green Bay Packers if he had the opportunity.
The Pittsburgh Steelers or the whoever.
Maybe not Terry, but you get my point.
Can you at least, so are there repercussions from that loss? Like, let's say like it's not a critique, but it is a factual, like losing Noah Pauley was a blow for Penn State. Are there repercussions that they're suffering right now? Because they don't even know about Jameer Dean maybe without Kashif Moore. But obviously,
same
like
with
some of this,
same with Deshaun Hall, that was Kashif too. In my opinion, he's scouted well, he's recruited well. They've gotten to the line with both of those guys. It takes more than that. You got to stay on guys. You got to stay aggressive. You got to be, like I talked about, cutthroat in some ways. And that to me isn't just a Kashif Moore thing. That's a whole recruiting approach as a staff, as much as that's just Kashif Moore's fault. So I personally look at it a little differently. We talk all the time about position coach recruiting this guy. It's kind of outdated, honestly. And in some ways I need to do a better job of explaining that in more stories, because I still, label position coaches as the lead recruiters. But, and I'm not saying that's the recruiting staff's fault. I'm not saying that's Derek Hoosier's fault. I'm not saying that's Kashif's or Matt. It's a group of getting that over the line, getting that to stay over the line. And again, let's also clarify too. Jameer Dean went to Georgia. It's a damn good program. He's from down south. Deshaun Hall's from Alabama, went to Auburn. Like, those were tough situations. I think if anything, it kind of speaks to, the further you get away from state college, the harder it is to retain guys. And maybe they're learning that to some degree at the moment as well. But I wouldn't put that on Kashif Moore. What I've seen from him is that he actually has a pretty good eye for scouting, and they're going to need that.
Yeah.
And that, again, but that's not just him too. That's a recruiting staff thing. Like I gotta make sure we preface that, because it's a group effort as much as anything.
Yeah. Sunwin says he wanted more notice about, but that's not how that works as far as, like the Green Bay Packers receivers job came open, and then everything happened after that.
Wasn't it wild that we talked to Noah Pauley in December?
Pauley came in December and was hired in February. So it wasn't just an overnight type thing.
Yeah.
Remember we talked to him for the first time though?
And the day or two later.
Next day. Yeah. It was, I was like, well, I wish I would have wrote that story right away, because that's now I completely wasted 7 minutes of that table. But anyway.
I'm just going to react to this one, because this is, maybe I shouldn't, but like Zone 2 Cardio says, be honest, does Penn State sign LeVar Arrington the first or Courtney Brown under today's NIL scope? Why hurt yourself? Why retroactively like cut through your emotional tendons for no reason? Like they didn't. It didn't exist, and so it doesn't matter. Maybe not, but like I don't know how that's necessarily helpful, or like that just feels like that feels what's the word? I don't want to say the wrong word. It feels like self-harm. Like that just feels like that doesn't do anybody any good. That's not really part of the conversation. So like if you can be kind to yourself, we don't need to have that necessarily as a part of the conversation. Now, Glenn Lamont wants to know, or says this: the bad thing about the class of 2027 is with all these losses, there will be current players being done. The portal will be critical. He thinks the 27 roster could be the worst roster since the sanctions. Like, have you guys looked at the progression of the roster and the idea that is there any reality behind the concern of the 27 roster's talent to be the worst since the sanctions? I just wanted to throw that out
That's
there.
That's a big gap.
That's a big leap, man. Like that,
because I was like, no. My initial reaction was, no, that's
sentence,
insane. That's
the first
crazy.
sentence makes sense. The second one does not. Like we're just like convincing ourselves that everything is going, like the meteor is going to hit. Like so.
What
like,
is the game? What is the movie where they jump to conclusions game? Is that Office Space? Yeah, like that feels like the last two like feel like we're just jumping to conclusions. There's no like rhyme or reason.
It was fine. The first part there's a logical point there that you need. Like, is the talent going to come on the front end when you recruit them and develop them, and they turn into your recruiting, or excuse me, they turn into the nucleus of your roster, and which I think is what they want. Absolutely, it's like the talent versus the availability in the building your way through the portal, bringing in grown men essentially that are physically ready to go and play, and your investment on them may be just 1 or 2 years, but at the same time that can go a long way. And I don't know that there's a right way to go about it. Like I think that, you're going to look at Indiana and boom, it's an outlier. Like it is one of those ones, but it also will provide you with some data points that you can use moving forward to build your roster up. So I think it's just kind of meeting in the middle. Like yes, you absolutely need recruiting talent, but at the same time, you're probably going to take fewer. And like I said, Alabama, Georgia, Indiana seem to understand that the recruiting class size is going to be smaller because your investment over the top for the portal guys or what have you is going to be bigger. Now, the problem there is you still need to be appealing to those portal guys. You need to be one of the top, not necessarily spenders in the portal, but top available situations in the portal. And that's where it's like the double-edged sword is like, okay, we can take this guy to go even more obscure. There's an episode
I have a new hot take
where he's doing the NFL draft and they have the number 1 pick, and it was the Keyshawn Johnson year. And he's talking about taking this guy. Well, you take Keyshawn Johnson, you don't have a quarterback to throw to him. Well, then we take the quarterback. Well, who's going to protect him? It's just one of those things. And if you get enough of those missing pieces, then all of a sudden you do have a roster that's like, I don't know about that. Now, what I do like here is the guys that they brought over from Iowa State were not just 1-year rentals. There's a bunch of them, but at the same time, a bunch of redshirt freshmen, sophomores, and things like that can help maintain the nucleus of your roster for the couple of years.
I'm going to take you a peek behind the curtain here quickly. Ryan, did you have a follow-up on that before I get to
some
nonsense?
Okay. Agree with that. That's all. Go ahead.
So peek behind the curtain, I was trying to say self-flagellation. See, I did it. I was worried when I was flagellation. Self-flagellation. There we go. My brain wanted to say self-flatulation, which I knew absolutely was not the correct thing to say. So I went with a different, but self-flagellate.
Self-harm sounds like the safer way to say that anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, so self-harm sounds a little bit more brutalist and a little more intense. Like if you
just mispronounce it and not
come
back.
Flowery. Yeah, exactly. I have a new hot take now, which is that I think Chase Soul is the most important player for Penn State to fix this problem, because if he blows up and has a 1,000-yard season and is drafted, to your point, Ryan, to become a attractive destination beyond just money, there has to be a path to the league. And to end the curse of the Penn State receiver room, somebody needs to pop off. Somebody needs to have a great year. And Chase Soul's that guy this year. So he is like, The play calling, the scheming for him to get open and make big plays, like it all has to align this year for Penn State to fix this problem overnight. If they can do that, then, they'll be back on track. If not, we'll be wandering the desert for another 40 years at receiver. Last thing here on the show. We talked about this going into it, but we did not actually discuss this coming out of it. James Armstrong, the 2028 quarterback, commits to Penn State football in a big win that could potentially signal what this class, this roster can do in the class of 2028. Fitz, you wrote that this could be the most important recruit that Matt Campbell has successfully brought on board. So take us through why.
Yeah. Number one, it's quarterback, the base of your class. You want it to be a quarterback every year. Penn State's kind of gotten away from that, at times in the last couple of cycles. I know it's a new coaching staff, but you look at when Penn State went out and got a quarterback this cycle, it was, as they were a couple of, I would say more than halfway into their, their class of 2027. So you always want to have one of those guys on board early. And this is a Western Pennsylvania kid that's got, I don't want to call it marketability, but like people know who James Armstrong is. They know, from the time that he's played middle school ball and things like that this kid is on another level. It not Terrell Pryor, but kind of a similar type of theme here where you're talking about everybody knows this guy. And does that mean they follow him? Not necessarily, but it gives you something to work with as you start the next class. Now, Penn State's got 2 of the top 5 ranked guys, and hey, 2028 rankings, it's way too early for that, but 2 of the top 5 guys in Pennsylvania, which is a big step forward considering they've got, I think, 3 of the top 30 in the class of 2027. So light on the horizon there, which is a good thing. And when you've got a guy that's at a premium position, that's got this kind of, I don't want to say aura about him because we're kind of blowing him up at this point in his career, but Pittsburgh Post-Gazette Athlete of the Year as a sophomore. Does not happen. It's the first time it's ever happened. You think about all the guys that have come through Pittsburgh and have really, left their mark on the football world. Well, James Armstrong's up there. Now, does that mean that, he's automatically your quarterback of the future? Not necessarily. He's got a lot of developing to do. Great prospect, great athlete, but you've just got so much going for you if you get that guy in the boat early. And to me, that tells me about his mindset. It says, I want to be in the boat early. I want this thing built around me. Not as selfishly as I just made it out to be, but like, this is going to go out and recruit for you.
From a leadership standpoint, right?
Yes,
Not from
like be the guy. And that's an alpha move. And Penn State has not necessarily had that in leading their class. And you hope you can surround them with good talent. Penn State's got 3 commits. Like, one's a kicker, but they got 3 commits in the top 20, in the class of 2028. Duck Flemings is there as well, and he's a 4-star kid. So like very separated from what we've seen in 2027, especially in the region.
Ryan, thoughts on? I know we talked about this on the video, but any thoughts here about James?
We should just start with this topic. I got 1,000 thoughts. No, but the one thing here's I'll say this is maybe the most thing that's kind of one thing that's really festered with me. I interview every high school coach that I can after a guy commits. And one of the things I always ask them is, how is he as a leader? What is he like? Is he a lead by example guy? How's he in the locker room? Vocal, all those things. And I feel like 80-90% of the time I get a lead by example guy. James Armstrong is not a lead by example guy. He is, but he's vocal too. He's publicly a leader. There's a lot of other things in there that I love, especially at the quarterback position, right? I'm not saying that there's a bunch of guys in this class, I'm sure, who will become leaders in different ways. I already feel like I have a good feel for his leadership. And at 16, whatever age he's at right now, I think he's in a great position to become that leader that Penn State could really use to become, I guess, right. He has to prove it on the field, but in some ways, face of a program in some ways. That's no knock on, Case Evans, who came through, Will Wood, but there's just a different swagger with this one. And I mean that in a very good way.
Like some like Troy Hune was like guys like Troy Hune, and he was, right. I don't want to call him like a great recruiter or anything like that, but like guys like Troy Hune, but he's in San Diego. Like there's only so much you can accomplish when you're across the country. And he was here quite a bit. No doubt about it. I know he wanted to be at Penn State. But at the same time, like having him in Pittsburgh makes a difference.
No doubt.
Well, that feels like a good place to leave it. Everyone in the chat says that's great, but what's the reality of him actually signing when money gets thrown at him?
I'm telling you, he's different. I feel good about him signing. Really do. I really do. I would not. I've told you, Samaje Robinson. There were some guys, and I was like, nah, this is a different one. I do think he's going to sign. I don't think money's everything. This is a kid who's been wearing Penn State sweatshirts since, he's young. I mean, he's a Penn State fan. There's a lot there that is different about James Armstrong. And that's starts with leadership and perspective in those things. And I think for a 16-year-old, I believe he's 16, he's on a different level than the vast majority of kids I talk to.
Fitz, final thoughts here as we round into the final few minutes.
That's definitely going to be a hot take now. James, please don't go somewhere else. Please, James.
For Ryan's sake.
Don't do that to me.
You look at what Penn State did at quarterback in the last since Sean Clifford. Somebody mentioned Clifford on the chat, and Clifford's really, I don't want to say your last guy that was out in front of things, but he did commit very early. And I would maybe throw Bo in there in terms of guys that people kind of gravitated to, and you saw that especially when you got on campus. Will Levis maybe a little bit, but Will Levis was a situation where he came in when the class was already done, basically, like because you lost Brandon Wimbush. Is that Wimbush? Tough to keep track, or Fields. No, tough to keep track of all of them at this point.
It was after Fields, I think. I don't know why I'm gonna be.
Wimbush was much earlier than that. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But that's the situation that you're in. Penn State, not a quarterback haven. But no, you see it kind of a different aura about them. And I think that's sorely needed when you're trying to convince guys to maybe play here, but not maximize what you're going to get elsewhere. So that's part of the whole process in my eyes. And that's why I think it's the biggest get so far for Matt Campbell. Wrapping up my 5-paragraph essay there.
All right.
It was a very good story. It was also, I gave Sean the idea on the show last week and he rolled his eyes at me. But anyway.
Is that how that works?
That's how I see it.
Okay.
But what do I know?
We got some great stuff coming up next week. Speaking of quarterbacks, we're working on a legacy player from Penn State lore joining the show next week. So make sure you subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Of course, we'll have more recruiting conversation content. We'll be looking ahead. We'll be looking behind. Ryan's cooking up some cool stuff for next week. And, we're just 1 week closer to Penn State football kicking off training camp. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So enjoy your summer, but make sure you keep an eye out for what we're doing here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Like the video. Drop it in. I like the collection plate on the way out. It's free. Doesn't hurt you. Appreciate you. And if you haven't yet made the decision, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'm Thomas Rankar. For Sean Fitz and Ryan Snyder, we'll talk to you next week.